Hi guys, today we're just going to do a quick lesson on observations and inferences and measurements. These notes can be found online on my CBA. So let's just start off by going back to something that I had discussed yesterday, the idea of the scientific method. And I said, and I promised, that the scientific method would not be something that we would be covering in any detail or talking about the steps of the scientific method. But there are some things involved in it that are going to apply to earth science, and they're going to apply to every single science that you ever take, high school, college, and beyond. So just be aware that like one of the first things that we do as scientists, as people, is we make observations about the natural world, and then we ask questions about those observations. And so the first two steps are really wrapped up in those ideas, making observations and asking questions. From there, we start to come up with some solutions, or we start to come up with some reasoning behind maybe why things work the way they do. And so that's kind of the next step of stating a hypothesis, a guess about the future, and then we're going to test that and we're going to analyze that. We're going to draw some conclusions from that. So that's the scientific method in a nutshell. But now we're just going to focus in on a couple specific things and some, really, this is a vocabulary lesson, learning the definitions of a few words from the first chapter of your textbook. So let's start with that first thing that we just talked about, and that's observations. Observations are when we're gathering information using our senses. Okay? We have our sense of sight, touch, smell, taste, and hearing, and all five of those together, we're going to look at the world around us, we're going to smell the world around us, and it's interesting because most of the time we're going to use our eyes, right? And that's true in most cases. But it's funny how the sense of touch and smell and taste and hearing come into play in some instances. I'll give you an example. Okay, so my example is this. A few years ago, me and another teacher were looking at this sample, this rock sample, and we both looked at it. We were both kind of like very puzzled by this really random two-tone colored rock. And so we were trying to figure out what it was and had absolutely no clue. And I stared at it for quite a time, and so did the other earth science teacher. And so finally she said to me, "Why don't you lick it?" And I looked at her like, you know what, why not? So I licked the thing, which I won't do now, but I did. And the thing tasted absolutely terrible. It was totally salty. Okay. And I knew instantly. In that moment, my sense of taste told me exactly what it was. And it's pretty cool because, like, obviously, my sense of sight did not. But as soon as I tasted it, I knew. So, in some cases, your other senses do come in handy. Okay. And I'm not suggesting you go out there and start tasting every rock that you see, but I am suggesting that sometimes you need to use your other senses to figure things out. Okay? And so this example, this is actually Himalayan rock salt, which you may have seen before. You can buy it at Wegmans. It's a lot more popular than it used to be. And so at the time when I found this, I had no idea, but now it's all over the place. I have a Himalayan rock salt lamp in the back of my room. But again, the sense of taste really comes in handy when you're dealing with something like salt. Okay? So that's a good example. Okay, so there are two different types of observations, and they are called qualitative and quantitative. And you may have learned about this in seventh grade science, which is awesome if you did. Qualitative means to describe with your senses. Okay? Quantitative is still using your senses, but in this case, we're going to describe with a number. So qualitative, think quality. This Lamborghini is really nice and shiny and white, and I want one, right? Quantitative, you could say that it costs about $4.5 million, and therefore I'm probably never going to have one. So that's the difference between the two of them. Do I need you to know qualitative versus quantitative? No. I just want you to realize that quantitative is referring to numbers like quantity. Qualitative is referring to the description of its quality using your senses. Okay, so just note the difference there. Now, one thing I want you to be aware of is that this word measurement, a measurement is really a quantitative observation. When you measure something, and you're going to do this all year long in earth science, you're going to be measuring things using an instrument, right? Figuring out the length of something with a ruler, figuring out the mass of something using a balance. So these instruments help us make determinations as to the size or the amount of something. And so it's really a number that we're describing of that thing. Okay, so just realize that any measurements are all observations, quantitative observations. Okay? Now, an inference is a totally different thing than an observation. An observation, we're looking at it, we see it, we measure it, it's right here and now. An inference is kind of that next step, and it's really kind of like a fancy word for a prediction or even a hypothesis, right? We're making a conclusion based upon what we see or what we observe. Okay, so what you really want to look for with inferences are, do you see a past or a future tense in the statement? So if I made an inference about something, for example, let's say I'm the meteorologist and I say that it will rain or it will be rainy on Tuesday. Okay, if it's rainy on Tuesday, that'd be awesome. I was right. Okay, but it hasn't happened yet. It's a prediction about the future, Tuesday. Okay, so anytime you see the future tense, like will be, or if you see the past tense, like it has been in the past, okay, or it happened a long time ago, and I did not directly observe it, that is an inference. Okay, so just be aware, look for past, look for future tense, and you know it's definitely an inference. And you're going to be doing an assignment later where you have to determine the difference between observation and inference. Okay, so just heads up there. Now, here's a really good example of that. You see a picture in front of you, and if I was in the classroom with you and you were observing this picture, most of you would immediately jump to the conclusion, like they got into an accident. Okay, this guy over here is in the car, and this guy over here is in the truck. Maybe his name is G Wiz. Okay, and they got into an accident. But we don't know that. Okay, the observation is the car is crunched in the front. Okay, the observation is that there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 trees. Okay, the observation is this guy is on a telephone. Okay, the observation is that there is an intersection of Long Street and Bell Road. Those are observations. Okay, now we can start to make inferences about what happened. Maybe this guy ran the stop sign, or there wasn't a stop sign. This guy ran the stop sign and ran into him. Okay, we don't know. We're making a guess as to what happened in the past, and that's an inference. So just be aware of the difference there. Okay, same is true with this picture. We can make some observations. We could say that there is a barn, and I can see 1, 2, 3, 4 windows and 1 door on the barn. Okay, you could say that there is a road. You could say that there's a broken barn. These are all observations that are directly observed at this moment in time right now. But an inference would be something as to what happened. There was an earthquake. The road cracked and moved that way. There was an earthquake. The shaking caused the apples to fall off the trees. There was an earthquake which caused this tree to break. Okay? This is a guess as to what happened in the past. I wasn't there to observe it, but I am making a guess based upon what I see. Okay, so just be aware, anything in the past or anything in the future is always an inference. Okay, and you need to know the difference between those two things because they pop up a lot, especially in earth science, because a lot of stuff we can't directly observe in earth science. I can't know what happened millions of years ago in Earth's past, so I have to make guesses based upon what I see presently. Okay, the same is true about like weather stuff. I have no idea what the weather is going to be like next week because I haven't been there, but I can make some guesses based upon the atmospheric conditions right now. Okay, so know the difference between observation and inference. All right, so here's one more. I figured I'd show you this one too. I think I did this when I taught 7th grade, but you can see a couple tracks here. You make the observation. There's the tracks of one organism, there's the tracks of another organism, maybe they're dinosaurs. Okay, now by saying they're dinosaurs, that is an inference. Okay, by saying I see tracks and I see other tracks, that's an observation. They're looks like they're walking towards each other. Okay, here's an inference. Right, look what happened next. They came across each other and they were running around each other. Maybe one was chasing the other, and I'm guessing that maybe one of them was trying to eat the other one. Okay, that's an inference. And do I know that for sure? No. I could also say maybe they were dancing. Okay, who knows? I have no idea what's going on right here. It's in the past. It happened way before me. Okay, but I'm making some observations and guessing. Now, what's the last slide going to show us? What happened over here in this dark area? I don't know. We can make some guesses. Any predictions? Who's going to win here? Maybe they both walk away happy. I don't know. So let's see. Ah, the green guy is walking away by himself. Okay. So what happened to this red one, pink one? I don't know. Okay, but I'm going to make an inference that he got eaten and it was taken away by this guy. Okay, could be all kinds of different observations and inferences in these slides here. All right, two more vocabulary words. So the last one is an important one. This one is not as important. Estimation. Maybe I'll do this tomorrow. Estimation is trying to guess how much there is of something before you actually make a measurement. And the reason that's valuable is because it can kind of tell you whether your measurements are accurate or not. Okay? And we'll talk about that more, I think, in class tomorrow, because I want to show you an example of this similar to what this guy is doing. Okay, so we'll hold off on that one until you guys actually come into class. Check this one out. This is an important word, classification. And you'll see this a lot, and we do this a lot. Classification is the process by which we group things together based upon the qualities or the characteristics that they share. So we do this in science continually. We want to take all our thoughts and all our observations and we want to organize them into groups so we can understand them a little bit better. And so we classify, and you probably did this a lot in life science last year and biology. You probably are going to do it a lot this year. For example of this, for earth science, we group rocks into 3 different categories: igneous, sedimentary, and metamorphic. And then we break them into further categories after that. And we'll talk about that later on in the year. How are they classified? According to the qualities that they share, but also in this case, rocks are classified by how they are formed. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the year. Okay? So again, this lesson was just strictly based upon vocabulary words. And these vocabulary words, again, go all the way back to your original thoughts of the scientific method. Making observations, making hypotheses, drawing conclusions. It's all wrapped up in some of the ideas that we talked about here. Okay, that's it.